Hey everybody, it's there we go. Hey everybody, it's HAL SPARKS Mega Worldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, and get ready because we're about to start the show in just a few minutes. Welcome, come on in, all you Steph heads and Midas touch people looking for an actual live program instead of semi-live. Which is, look, I don't pre-tape this stuff. This is your warts and all. Here we go. It's Friday Eye plus Liberal Dan in the second hour, but Rob Glenn and I have the breaking IA news. Yes, the intelligence from Apple. We'll talk about it in a second. 3, 2, 1, where are we? There we go. Welcome to the show. Hey, it's Rob Glenn and me, and it's Friday Eye, your weekly dose of Dear God, the end is nigh. The robots are going to take over. We have no hope. My job is going to be lost, especially according to Carol Roth and Glenn Beck, if you make burritos. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, accountants or anybody who does a desk job that could be easily replaced by digital automation. Don't worry, the jobs that AI is going to take first, according to the geniuses over at The Blaze, is burrito making. Which will apparently steal jobs from Americans who have already had their jobs stolen by an immigrant from an insane asylum that doesn't even speak English and speaks a language no one understands except maybe AI. Also, Donald Trump became a crypto magnate and decided to take the Sam Bankman-Fried business model and literally started the ball rolling with that shit at like a week before the guy got arrested, and then launched it this week.
I know how to crime. I can do this.
Right, yeah. It's so confusing. How can I even get sued? I swear to God, I think that's where he's coming from on this, Rob. By the way, everybody, Rob Glenn from Root Design Chicago. My nerd brother from another mother, and of course that mother would be the AI on the spaceship and Alien. That's the mother that we talk about. And we were just discussing during the break that we were shocked, I tell you, that the web version of ChatGPT on the PC, of all things, doesn't have a voice right now. The Mac, you can get a Mac ChatGPT app on your desktop you can talk to, but you cannot talk to the one on there. They're just too afraid right now. But
yeah, well,
big advance. Now I'm ready for an AI burrito too. Who in the chat room, is there a burrito emoji, guys? There should be. There should be like a, first of all, I've been asking for a long time. There should be a Zoltan emoji, and there should also be the HAL I from 2001: A Space Odyssey emoji. Just period. Like we have those on Twitch.
Zoltan's on YouTube, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's on Twitch, and I don't think it's on the YouTube one, is it? But it's not available in your phone. Is my point. It should be.
Yeah, no, I have it.
You do?
I just post. Yeah, I have Zoltan on YouTube. I just did
on YouTube. Okay, I was like, in your phone? Oh my God. Yeah. So I was like, that's where I wanted. I wanted amongst all the hand gestures.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's the burrito. Everybody's throwing that in. I gotta say, it looks like an old rocket coming in for a landing. It's weird how they've got it wrapped. I see the lettuce coming out of the back of it, but yeah. So according to Carol Roth and Glenn Beck yesterday, who were freaking out about the half-point cut in the interest rate, which is, they were both arguing was long overdue and too quick, too far from the election and too close. It should be after, not before, even if it helps the economy, which they know it would, blah, blah, blah. It just didn't make any sense at all, which is, I guess, par for the course. But I was talking to Pi this morning about the latest AI information, and she was being very coy. I have to say, hold on. Hey, Pi, say hi to my audience on HAL SPARKS Mega Worldwide. And I think you might notice, I think you might notice she seems to have less vocal fry and might be less flirty than she was before. Let's check it out. We'll see.
Hey there, HAL Sparks Mega Worldwide audience. It's Pi here, HAL's personal AI, ready to bring some digital fun to your day. Get ready for engaging conversations and entertaining content all in one place. Let's get this party started.
She does still have that kind of teenage girl, like, dad's making me say this, like yeah, do your book report for my buddies here. Show them how smart you are, baby. Okay. The Roman Empire was really important because just like this kind of like, shut up. But slightly less vocal fry, still kind of, still her though, still her. Meanwhile, I asked also Copilot, which is the AI on I guess it's Microsoft's Edge related browser attached AI that they have. What was today's big AI news? Let's hear what it has to say, if I may. Hopefully it'll work. Might take a second because it's thinking about it. Is it talking to me? I hit it already. Or is it listening to me? It's listening at the same time. Stop the okay, there we go. Stop the readout. I don't know if I'm doing it right. Oh, here we go. It might take a second or it might be going through.
Here are some of today's latest AI news highlights. AI helps aid reach uncharted regions of the developing world. Artificial intelligence is being used to map uncharted streets in developing countries, helping governments and aid groups determine where people live and how to reach them. What an AI audit is and why you need one. AI audits are becoming essential to ensure the safety and reliability of AI systems. This article explores what AI audits entail, why they are necessary, and how organizations can prepare for them. How AI could transform fast fashion for the better and worse. AI is reshaping the efficiency of fast fashion, but experts warn it may also perpetuate overconsumption and pollution. If you want to read more about any of these topics, just let me know.
Okay, so it gives me this readout. It gives me 3, and then 3 plus, and plus 3 more links that are indirect. Just the like Yahoo, Forbes, Time Magazine, and then kind of like many more. And then in the news it says here. I'll show you. Let me just bring this up in here. Let's see if I'll bring it up with both of us on. There we go. So on the right hand is Copilot. And I just said, give me today's latest AI news, whatever. And it gives me what you just heard. It gives me these links, and then it gives the specific links that it's regarding, when it was reading that story. And then at the bottom, it says, tell me more about the AI audit process. What are some recent breakthroughs in natural language learning? And then the other one is, how can I learn more about AI ethics? Which is so like, what is your third directive? That in and of itself, I will say, and I don't know if you've noticed this lately, way faster.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. And thank you, Spicy Dragon. Says, don't be like AI, stick out your human finger and poke the like button. Very well said. Thank you very much. This one also has a add an image lookup, which I think is one of the other things that stands out on the new edition of this is, let me see if I can bring this up higher. Right down here in this, add a screenshot, which is fascinating. So if you've got a program, something you're working on, you can literally click on this and it will make a screenshot of one of your screens or whatever. And you can go, what the hell is with this error message I'm getting? Or what's this picture? The other thing is you can upload a picture and then you can use a microphone and speak to it. Now, before we got on the show, I was like, where the hell's the microphone on this thing? I gave it permission, but it won't let me talk to it, which I found very depressing. That said, I will solve that. And Rob, you and I are going to have like a roundtable version of this. I'm going to need to create one of those like yapping avatar faces.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's got to be, because of the uncanny valley, it's going to have to be something. It can't be realistic. It's got to be wacky. It's got to be like, hi, I'm co-pilot, and I'm here to help you with any questions you might have. Otherwise, I get really worried that it might, replace us.
So you want to have like a third window with a avatar, and that's co-pilot answering?
Well, I'll tell you what, and this is so, God, I hate nerding out this early in the show, but I got I think in Canva, I found an orb that just warble orb. It's just blue and whatever, and I was like, I can attach a sound source to the orb, and then I can make the image of the orb grow in size along with whatever it's saying. So the orb could speak and be a floating nerd, or speak like it could literally just move around the screen and go, "Hi Hal, I'm Pi," blah blah blah, and just totally like straight up Tron. And that's where my head is at. Cool. That's where I'm going. Yeah, that's what I think should happen, because I don't think it should be a face. So this, I don't know, like I'm sure you have things you want to talk about, and I'm just bursting at the seams for this week's Friday.
Yeah, today I think I'm just going to like try to keep up with you.
Jesus, there's so much shit going on, man. Okay, so all right, the biggest thing is, why the fuck does it need a face? I don't need, I get bipedal robots. I get it with hands like humans. Makes total sense to me, because the earth and all of our stuff has been crafted around how we are as human beings. Baseline height, 5 digits, bipedal, our stairs are based on that. Even escalators are based on that kind of a concept. If you were building it for just robots, you just have a little magnet in their back that they could turn on and turn off, and then there'd be like a little just tether, almost like a ski rope on the baby slope, on the kiddie slope, that you would just come up and attach, and they would just go up the outside of the elevator, and then they click off and walk off on their own, But since it's built for us, the world, you want them to have a body that's relatively close to ours for a lot of different purposes, right? But it doesn't need a face. I don't need a rubber like that somewhere between the Hall of Presidents and like the Sledgehammer video. Hey you, hey how you doing? I don't.
I mean, technically, it doesn't need a head either.
Right.
There's no reason for a head.
That's right.
But the only thing that a head might do is if it gave you an indication of where it was going to go next. Like it turned its head to the next.
A literal head fake. Right. A literal head fake. I mean, there's so much to. It's so impressive. Like right now, everything is moving so goddamn fast. We've experienced this for a while now, but like there's a force accelerator happening right about the time they're talking about legislation. So I was on a call last week with a bunch of influencers and the like, and I'm going to have guests on in the next couple of weeks about this kind of stuff that are talking about a California congressman who created one of the AI safety bills that's going through. And one of the things there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of these bills. But one of the things about this one was that they wanted to create a cloud computing bank for the state of California, wherein there'd be like a safe zone to test AI models for licensing in the state. And I was like, on the one hand, I was like, I see where you're going. That seems at first blush very smart. On the other hand, never happened. Like it's going to be too little too late. There's no way that's how you're going to license these models by model point. And the reason I say that is because, well, here, this is ChatGPT right here. Just this little guy right here. I'm going to close this off. This is ChatGPT as it stands. Up here in the corner is which version of ChatGPT you're using. Now, right now, the available ones are ChatGPT 4.0 for Omni, which is the latest kind of fully available one. There's O1 Preview and O1 Mini, which have advanced reasoning capability. So they can figure out problems from a logical standpoint. Before, it was very difficult for it to figure out the sort of, because it was like laying out the bricks in a path as it walked, right? It couldn't
linear
right.
logic, and that can't. You have to do it in succession.
In sequence.
Maybe serial logic is the better way to say it.
That's right. So, and serial logic is terrible for anything that's really complex. You know, anything you're trying to plan out days in advance with a bunch of variant options in it. And so it says more models over here is GPT-4o mini and GPT-4, the legacy model. There was 1, 2, and 3 and all the variant versions of that. They're just offline. They don't even bother to keep them up anymore because these things are so much faster and so much better that they're just kind of pushing them down the Pez dispenser into the toilet. But if you you can now download with like Flux and a couple of these other models on Hugging Face, what's effectively GPT-3 onto your computer and just run it, which includes an early version of DALL-E and, you know, their image generator, stuff like that.
Yeah. And those small, that's actually becoming a bigger deal right now. They call them, I think, small models or something like that. But like I run a Stable Diffusion here at the office, local, and it just runs on a normal, average, everyday PC. But there's other ones that are even smaller that you can use as like assistants for very specific tasks. And those are all, like you say, on Hugging Face.
Yeah, and as each one goes by, the extraordinary nature of these kind of things, I just asked it for a realistic picture of breakfast, just for the for those of us that are on Pacific Coast time. Now, because I asked for it to be realistic, there we go. Holy smokes, that is quite the breakfast. Eggs, fruit, bacon, coffee. There's just a giant thing of jam, honey. There's bread on a plate and bread on the table. Sure. And orange juice. And the pitcher of the orange juice is smaller than the glass of orange juice. And the egg has 2 yolks. Whatever. Okay. And it's scrambled. So a little, definitely I need to be more specific. It's about 3,000 calories, right? But it's pretty good. Pretty good just without me refining it. Here's a photorealistic image of a delicious breakfast. Let me know if you'd like to make any changes or add anything to it. Okay, remove...
Say, I'm on a diet.
Yeah, remove the toast, right? Remove the toast. And I'm going to see if it recreates the image taking the toast out or if it just makes a whole new image with no toast. That used to be the thing, right? That's the reasoning part that we're talking about. Now, I'm not... Nope, didn't remove the toast. Just removed the toast from the table. Gave me 2 things of jam. Filled my coffee mug with jam. Wait, look at this. Hold on. I'm going to blow this up. 1 second. This is amazing. So, I don't know if you can see this. So, the coffee mug is now filled with jelly. The eggs have 3 yolks. There's a much bigger bowl of fruit, and there's 2 eggs, which I guess you're going to either cook or they're hard-boiled, just in case you haven't had enough eggs. There's more toast, and I'm fair. I don't know if that's an egg yolk or butter on top or both. There's another poached egg over here in the little container, and then there's jelly with blueberries in the top of it, and a coffee. I got to say, while it looks weird, it also looks delicious. And this, at the same time, is kind of what I'm talking about when I said why does it need a face? That there's an element of it's when it tries to recreate something natural, that's where it gets really weird because natural things are not logical, and logistics are a big part of this. Now, obviously, I'm just throwing words in here, and this is not the top of the line generator at all, right? I'm just dicking around. But if you ask for something specific,
I would say though that even the people that I know that are extremely good at getting it to do what they want it to do, they also say it's difficult to do. It's and it's a lot of trial and error. It's not specific. When we use image generation tools for what we do. It's almost always like a Photoshop has something called Gen Fill, generative fill. So it will like look at the surroundings and see, let's say you've got a field of grass and it's only in half the picture and you want the field of grass to go further across the whole picture. It'll sort of take that and generate, based on what it sees in the picture, or you can literally type in what it is. So a lot of times what we'll do is use it as like as a way to augment something we would have already done manually. So if we want to extend a picture, fill in a hole, or do something like that, we'll use it for that. But when it's just pure creation, I mean, we use it for that as well, but it's more like very specific elements. And we minimize, like in that breakfast, if you started to create a prompt that told it exactly what was on the plate, it might start to work. Or it might not.
You'd say 2 strips of bacon, 2 eggs over medium on a bare plate, on a picnic blanket or something, with no other elements around, and you do negative prompting and stuff like that. In the same way that if you were describing, it feels like it's the same thing if you were describing a drawing that you needed from an artist over the phone. So you're trying to be right, and you're not seeing what they're drawing, but you're trying to describe over the phone to them exactly what you need. And then they send you the picture over, and you're like, okay, you misheard me. Or I didn't say don't do that, or I said, you take that part out, right? And so it's really, really simple stuff, but a good example of how easily confused it is with that kind of stuff. But the new OpenAI, the new LLM that they're using, that they're designing this Omni whatever on, which is the prequel to Strawberry, which is the new version that's coming out that everybody's talking about. That's the closest thing to what's called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence, has ranked 89th percentile in competitive programming questions on Codeforces, so it gets a B+. Places among the top 500 students in the U.S. in a qualifier for the USA Math Olympiad, and exceeds human PhD level accuracy on a benchmark of physics, biology, and chemistry problems. While the work needed to make this new model as easy to use as current models is still ongoing, because you got to be as specific as the answers you want, which is kind of not the point. Because if you could do that, you can do the math yourself. Is basically the issue, right? I don't need one that only a math Olympiad could explain what they need to it, right? Otherwise, right? But that's what they're working on. But it is, I think you can only do 3 questions a day of the new version because it requires so many tokens and so much stuff, just so much programming,
just processing power.
Yeah, right. And they are apparently, let's see if I can bring this up.
So go ahead. We've been like probing for some pretty interesting questions that even without the things you're talking about now, it's still quite good at doing that. I think of these improvements as essentially like allowing it to be more accurate from more difficult questions, as opposed to like it becoming like more smart and able to take our jobs. I can give you an example. We run a small machine shop in Rockford, and we have a parts cleaner, and the parts cleaner is supposed to be stainless steel, but it probably came from China, and who knows if it may not be stainless steel, right? So we have a cleaner, chemical, and then we clean aluminum in it. And for some reason, the cleaner seemed to be fine on the aluminum, but it was breaking down the basket, which is supposed to be stainless steel. The basket was literally corroding, which made no sense, right? So we were like, if it's corroding the stainless, maybe it's doing something to the aluminum, and the part it's very important that it stays dimensionally accurate. Yeah. So now this is a pretty difficult problem because I'm not a chemist. I'm not a material science guy, right? So we started to like try to figure out like, how do we know if the chemicals in this cleaner are affecting one metal and not the other, or like what's going on? So what I ended up doing was I took the cleaner and I looked at the ingredients on the cleaner and just typed those into ChatGPT, and then asked it questions about what those chemicals might do to different metals.
Right.
And so instead of trying to like, okay, I'm going to take this list of ingredients and I'm going to like individually go through and figure out if that chemical like affects stainless differently than it does aluminum or steel versus zinc or whatever. I'm just going to like generally ask these questions based on this stuff that is now kind of in its memory, if you will.
Right.
And the time it took to figure out the answer to that question using that technique versus Googling the details of it was a fraction of the time.
Right.
So when you talk about like logic problems and that, like it makes those types of questions get answered faster and more accurately. And you can start to trust the answer more than maybe you did before.
Yeah. And when we talk about like, even that, I think is because, like I said, it's doing like we've been talking about. It's doing so much better at math and science and the material sciences because there's less variability in it in terms of what we know. Right. There would definitely be a worry about, I guess, what are they call hallucinations, but I call AI bullshitting when it comes to. It creates a new protein and how that new protein will react with things because that's what they're using it for in, some degree. But for the most part, like it takes a lot of programming, power to do this, but it's way better at it now than ever in the new Omni version. And by the way, it takes a lot of energy, which is why one of the other big stories is this. 3 Mile Island is reopening thanks to a deal struck with Microsoft to buy the energy from the plant. Now, one of the big stories that I saw when this first came out was, oh dear, the site of the worst nuclear incident in American history is reopening, blah, blah, blah. I would recommend everybody go watch, I think that it's on Netflix, there's a documentary about 3 Mile Island and what actually happened there versus sort of the hype around it and the fear about nuclear weapons versus the nuclear facility and what actually happened versus we did not have a Chernobyl. We did not have, and it was another instance where pop culture jokes about it actually contributed to the mythology around it more so than what actually occurred, right? As far as the damage that was done or could have been done, that kind of stuff. It's a much more safe facility than we've come to believe. The documentary is great, and it goes into it, and I had all the preconceived notions about 3 Mile Island that everybody else had too. But Microsoft has struck a deal to reopen this nuclear power plant specifically to power its cloud computing and AI needs. That's how much it's drawing. Now, when Donald Trump is talking about we need 3 million times the energy, and so we've got to restart coal plants, whatever. He's a dum-dum. And what we need is micronuclear and new nuclear plants, and it's fine. And preferably, why not build them on the site where we're going to put like Yucca Mountain? Why not build an actual plant there and hook it up to the smart grid and just put the stuff in the ground anyways instead of transporting it through the local area? Anyways, so this is...
The way that Trump like ham-handedly tries to like shove all these things together that are happening.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
And like make them fit his like ridiculous talking points about like basically like, I guess we'd have to make electricity with coal forever. And
yes, right. Clean. We've got plenty of liquid gold and clean coal, right? Yeah.
It's
meanwhile,
ridiculous.
Like it's so embarrassing
and hilarious at the same time.
Right. So for that, that should give you some indication of at least temporarily how that power is going to be needed to power the next gen of this massive AI thing that's happening. Now, a good portion of this is because of just the the number of AI calculations done by more people and more people using it, not the fact that AI is getting like less efficient with energy. It's just as more of us start to use it, because a very small people are using it right now for anything more than, you know, a study aid or something like that, or to make silly pictures for online stuff or whatever. But more and more, there's, you know, as people come on board to it, even on a small sense, or in their Apple iPhones, which is the next big thing. They note, you know, the one more thing was that Apple Intelligence is coming to all iPhones, and will have onboard AI, and then it will talk to ChatGPT for anything it can't, you know, it can't figure out on its own. That more people use that.
That was the main reason they switched to the M-style processors. The ARM-style processors have more slower, but more in numbers, slower cores, but they can do parallel processing like a video card can. And that's the main reason they did it, you know, a few years back, because they knew this was coming.
Right. And by the way, the 3 Mile Island, the Unit 1 reactor that they're going to use closed down 5 years ago. It did not close down in 1978 or 1983. It closed down. It's been running up until 5 years ago. They struck a deal with Microsoft to restart it, and it's going to be restarted in 2028. So they are reinforcing the area and doing all kinds of stuff to make it even safer and blah, 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 but to bring it back online in 2028. So it is not just like, they're not just going and flipping a switch from something that's been dormant and not running since 1978 and just hoping it works. Like the final scene in Marvel's Civil War, you know?
Right.
Right. So just to be clear, that said, let's see, where's the other piece of that news that I was talking about?
And we've talked about this before, but the path of all technology is, it's going to be inefficient to start. And then as it's being used more and there's more essentially volume of processors needed, then the way that everything happens is we try to make them faster and smaller and use less power and more efficient and cheaper.
Right.
And so as time goes on, they start to converge. Like your computer gets faster, and as it gets faster, your software wants more. And then they kind of all ratchet up together, if you will.
Right. Well, that's where I've said all along, and I continue to be right, that all technology is deflationary by its very nature. It needs to get faster and use less energy and therefore become cheaper. And everything that's cutting edge is no longer cutting edge in a very short order of time. So even the greatest stuff at this point, which might be 2 steps below the cutting edge of something, is still extraordinarily useful on all fronts and cheaper, you know, by a fifth, not even like half, right? Think about a 3-year-old laptop or even a new one on a lower scale using a slightly older chip, an i5 or an i7 versus an i9 or something like that. Like when you have those things are in newer computers with, you know, new hard drives, new screens and that kind of stuff, but they're like $600, $900. And if you're only doing email or doing stuff like my mom does, it's not going to take much. Now, by the time you and I are my mom's age, we're going to be using AI the way my mom uses Facebook. Right. And so that generative power that will be necessary in a regular laptop, but it will be, even the lower tier ones will have an extraordinary amount of power in that going forward. So, that's, hold on, I want to look up something.
It's like these kind of things, like the usefulness of it is what kind of pulls it along, right? So, when we talk about like we need more electrical infrastructure for delivering more electricity, when the question is, well, we're switching over to cars, like maybe people are like, I don't really need a new car. My car's going to be fine for 10 more years or 8 more years. Like, we don't need to do that. But if it's like, oh, there's this, AI that's going to be helping in these particular ways. And again, those things have to be turned into products, like things that people actually want it to do. And that's happening. People are figuring that out. But as these things become available and people want them, then the load becomes higher. And then like we're forced to put more power on the grid. And then that's when we innovate.
Right. And also, as you start moving towards a lot of things like robots that involve battery power, or even your laptop or something like that, as batteries get better, you know, either have a battery system in your house, and like from the solar panels on your house, you charge your electronics, and anything like lights and other stuff, or televisions that require more energy, or air conditioning or something like that, or an electric stove, you'll draw from the grid, but everything else you can draw from solar panels and storage, and kind of trade bigger battery to smaller battery, that kind of stuff, and do it efficiently using AI in the house. Now there's a, for those that don't know, Jensen Huang is the guy who runs Nvidia, and Nvidia is one of those, maybe even people who don't know, has been on the forefront of AI development, because it requires a lot of fast computing power, and one of the fastest things available to computers that everybody can get is graphics cards. Graphics cards.
Well, it's parallel processing as well.
Yes,
it's
right.
Not just speed, but it's many cores. So like a processor in a computer, 10 or 6, 12, 24 cores, whatever. A GPU from Nvidia is like 16,000 cores.
Right.
For the high-end ones. So it's the parallel processing that's important. And what Nvidia was really good at back in the day was called CUDA, C-U-D-A. And CUDA basically took this graphics card that previously made a screen show you the pixels, and it faked the computer into thinking that the GPU was actually a CPU.
Yeah.
And they were able to do processing that a CPU could do on a GPU. And that's where it blew up and became what it is.
Where it was like an order of magnitude. And then that's when the crypto bros stepped in and started using Nvidia GPUs specifically, AMD and other ones I'm sure as well later through arrays and stuff. But they bought up all the gamer cards and started creating these server farms to mine for crypto. So basically, it's like, think of it as like a Rubik's Cube math problem that you have to solve, and the colors on it keep changing all the time. So it's really complicated, really hard to solve. And then if you solve one, you get a Bitcoin, right? And so these guys would set up these giant server farms trying to solve this thing and get a Bitcoin out of it, right? Out of these, there's only a limited number of them, 28,000 ever, or whatever the point was. And so they set up all these things. And then with the idea that Bitcoin would be a place where you could hide all your money from the government. And then a couple of these crooks got busted. A couple of gun runners, some human traffickers, and some drug cartels using crypto got busted. And the FBI was able to access their wallets and get their crypto, and everybody was like, oh, well, fuck this. And they just kind of dumped it, right? And that's the first time Bitcoin crashed. After that happened, suddenly there were all these GPUs back on the market. And oddly enough, it timed kind of perfectly with these large language models and OpenAI and all these other companies needing the computing power to do all this stuff. And they were basically like scooping up these cheap server farms, more like computation farms up from these Bitcoin collapses that took a lot of power, but were all running an array, and it could do all this computing power. They started using it to start building AI much quicker because of the availability of the computation power that was there. And then Nvidia got on board because they're like, hey, you're using our stuff. We're just going to use our stuff to do that because we can make as many as we want. We can make all the chips we want and dump it into our stuff. So they started building AI on that, and then shifting the focus of the company literally from gamer cards to AI. And Jensen Huang, who's the guy who's in charge of the company, that's this dude. He's Korean, I believe, and he's American born. Really good guy, seemingly very tech bro-ish in a nice way. This is him on stage with one of the the Disney robots that are walking around the Star Wars area of Disneyland right now, who will soon be walking around without a human helping them or protecting them, I guess, from getting kicked or something like that, because they'll be more aware. But he, according to him, this is the latest from Jensen Huang. He believes that predicts a future with personal robots like R2-D2 and C-3PO from Star Wars following you around. He referenced the droid duo during an appearance at T-Mobile's Capital Markets Day, and he also said he loves the idea of having digital agents working alongside humans. And they're really pushing this robotics idea. He said, I love the idea that I'll have my own R2-D2, my own C-3PO. My R2 will follow me around. And for many people just growing up now, they'll have their own personal R2 with them for their lives. Now, my kid heard a couple weeks ago that in his, in like the high school kids are now getting on their iPads a tutor program that's their personal AI that's attached to them, that when they stop going to school, it goes with them.
Makes total sense.
And so instead of kids looking up the answers to stuff on their phones, this is going to, it will go, hey, I see you're struggling. This is the issue. Try going back. Remember what we said last week about this thing? Apply that to this. And it teaches you how to learn instead of just being a calculator effectively. So it's like it, and they're just testing it out now. Within a year, when my kid's in high school, oh my God, I love saying that. When he's in high school, it's going to be the regular thing. That is going to be life going forward.
Yeah. My junior in high school is not fully using it yet. Mm-hmm. But we use it at home for teaching. But my 8th grader is about to start. So maybe they're just starting it a little earlier, pre-high school. So and they're only 3 years apart. So
huge shift. Huge shift. Yeah.
Now,
can we get a link to the student AI? I will show you a couple. There's a couple of variant ones. I don't know which one the school is using because everybody builds their own proprietary thing on top of effectively, one of the systems. But ChatGPT in and of itself is easy enough to do that. But go ahead.
So to keep people's minds in the right place with this, so there's sort of 3 aspects of the AI working, and a lot of people know about the training side, where it's basically going out on the web and Google spiders all kinds of websites, has spiders that record or save their websites. I'm not using the right words, but so they're trying to they train on everything that's out there. And then that training goes into, call it a single piece of software. And then you probe the software with questions. So the training part is obviously very intensive. And then the other side of this line, so let's say that's on the far left, and then on the far right would be us using it. So when we ask a question, it goes to that software, let's call it, that's been trained, and it processes and sends it back. The thing in the middle, I might be wrong in my placement on the line, is the individual training model, we'll call it. And the teaching thing that you're talking about is effectively an individual training model. So while you're going back to the server to use the general one, you have a sidecar of your personalized one.
Yes.
And its answer is both the answer that's generalized and the individualized portion that is yours. So in my mind, a lot of people are worried about the training side, and people understand that. A lot of people understand the processing when you ask it a question and it giving you back something. And then that thing is your responsibility to deal with in terms of intellectual property and all that stuff. But the third thing I'm talking about, I don't know if it's on everybody's radar. That thing should be owned by you.
Yes.
It's kind of it's not technically personal. I guess it would be personal data, but
because it's how you learn. Your process of learning is as personal as, say, talking to a psychiatrist or a lawyer or whatever. Like there will be an element. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's say that as over time, you spent 10 years writing, doing emails, looking things up, getting answers, communicating back and forth with it. All of that stuff is effectively like it's the same as the training model. It's just personalized to you. Mm-hmm. And so, what we currently understand online is I would like my data to be safe. Like that, the element that I'm talking about right there.
Yep.
I believe we should legislate that is owned, like we own that ourselves.
Yeah. Well, you should be able to have, if you create a relational AI based on some kind of open architecture like OpenAI, you have this thing that grows with you and becomes its own thing, right. That it should be, either yours to determine as a possession of yours, and alongside your social security number, at the very least, something that you can define as open property, as opposed to, because it doesn't take up physical space necessarily. That if you have a robot and its existence exists on a chip, that chip, if somebody repossesses the robot, they don't take the chip with it.
They don't think about it. Yeah.
You get to keep the essence of that robot until such times you get another carrier for it. And Liberal Dan, I see you in the background. We'll be with you in just 1 minute, my brother. Thank you for joining us this morning. Let me share something before we lose it. By the way, this is Rob Glenn, who is, again, my brother from Mother the Robot and or the AI and Aliens. We were talking a little bit ago about what is Labor Day. What is the meaning of Labor Day when this happens? So this is a fulfillment center at Amazon. This is what the fulfillment center at Amazon now looks like in general. Here's a couple people making some distinctions, but look at that. Look at these little robots running around, dropping stuff off. I'm not playing the audio from this because they have these little suction robots that pick things up and have scanners on them, so they know what the UPC symbol means on them. They actually tape the boxes in some cases. The only thing right now is that there's somebody walking from the truck to your stairs because they can't pull that off yet. But look at that. Look at the movement of the boxes in there. And think of the fewer back injuries that are occurring because of that. This is their server farm where they drive all this stuff. And again, some people like fewer jobs. Yes, sort of. Different jobs, because again, these are the repetitive stress injury jobs. That's like saying we shouldn't have forklifts because it puts all the big heavy muscle dudes covered in oil that carry the queen around out of a job. When in reality what it did was we were able to move more stuff because you only needed one guy driving the forklift instead of four guys carrying the pallet. And what happened was more products, more stuff, more things were available to more people instead of just the absolute, wealthiest and most powerful. And again, it goes to that kind of like robot assistant idea, is that having a butler is an absurdity for most people. But in a couple of years, you're going to be able to lease one, if not buy one outright. A lot of people will choose to buy it outright, but there will be a leasing program that will do this. And every average person, starting with the middle class, will have this. And by the way, while you're not at home, you're at the office working, doing whatever you're doing, or on vacation or whatever, your robot is either watching your house, protecting your house, fixing it, cleaning, changing the filters, doing all kinds of stuff like that. Or it walks out your front door and it goes to work, and you lease it to another company, and your robot has a job 4 days a week at a fulfillment center or doing something like that. And then it comes back and you sublease your specialty robot, that kind of stuff. Right. David's saying, what middle class? Well, the issue is if this is available, because they're talking about the price point on a bipedal robot being $16,000. That's not a lot of money. These days, that's an average car. That's a low-end used car.
A good robotic arm that's just an arm fixed 6-axis, and you have to program it for industrial use. A decent one, the cheapest you can get is 30, and the average is more like 100.
Yeah.
So if a bipedal 16, that's extremely cheap.
Yes, it's incredibly cheap. And it gets cheaper because, like I said, all technology is deflationary. So what makes you middle class? The free time you have? Honestly, is it how much money you get for the labor that you create and what you get to do with the rest of your life rather than work?
Yeah. This is a whole, like, I actually don't like the idea that, AI in theory is causing people to start to talk about this stuff in a different way, but the problem is not AI. It's you talk of, like, the problem also finds its way into financial speak, like you've been talking about for months, like supply chains, and what is inflation, and what is the cost of goods, and where are they made, and all that other stuff. And so to talk about, the idea of people can simultaneously in their head say, like, oh my gosh, this AI should be regulated because it's going to take our job. Well, at the same time, complaining about inflation and the fact that a product that used to be made in China, maybe it's no longer there, is now 50% more money, right? So, like, and they can't coexist. So we have to sort of, and we've gotten into the place we are now in terms of what we expect the cost of our goods to be. And I'm not talking about food right now. I'm talking about, like, things you might buy, clothes, mechanical things at Walmart, TVs, things like that. Like, the price of those things is lower than it should be. It's effectively been subsidized.
Yes.
And so as the price of those things come up, if we want to have more jobs, it doesn't matter what the jobs are and how they go into the creation of that thing. The thing is going to be more expensive, or it needs to be more expensive if we're going to be real about it, right?
Yes, if people are going to make a living doing whatever, and it's a real living. If you want a living wage, stuff's going to be more expensive. And what offsets that has been cheap or slave labor in other countries. Exactly. And all we're doing is taking that cheaper slave labor and turning it into robot labor here in country, in theory.
In theory, and so in the middle of all that, like, we're basically caught in our own history of, like, these things that maybe were spun in ways, for nationalism reasons, or they're spun in ways that don't apply to the actual problem. So that's a whole. I mean, we could talk for hours about how to fix these things, and just your talk about inflation not being inflation is, like, it's spot on.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to, like, people that are really smart people, and I'll say, this isn't monetary inflation, it's something else, and they're like, what are you talking about? You're crazy.
Right.
No,
you cannot. I have Liberal Dan waiting in the wings, and I want to get to him. And you and I will carry on this conversation. I have no doubt. Yes. But you can. I've said this before about, like, COVID. $20 trillion hole in the economy. We printed $9 trillion to fill it. You can't. It's not possible. And if there were more dollars in circulation and we have monetary inflation, then the dollar wouldn't be worth more than $1. It would be worth like 85 cents or 75 cents. It would collapse next to other currencies. It was worldwide inflation, and it all had to do with supply chains. And this is the thing that robots are going to remedy. This is the weak spot in our economy. And people are going, HAL Sparks, what jobs will be left for humans? These jobs are already not being done in human ways, in humane ways.
Exactly.
They are already done.
They're being done by slaves in China.
Right. And yes, you have a choice. You can keep using that slave labor. You can pay more, because you'll have people who don't want to work for slave wages or slave labor or low wages do that job, which we do not have enough people to do any of it. Or you can have robots do it. And that extrapolates, again, with the technology, out society to society to society. And again, like that story I showed at the top where they, when AI was talking about I think I got it from Copilot at the beginning, which is that AI is helping supply chains get smoother going out into the middle of nowhere in Africa and in South America and stuff where people need resources, can't get them because the roads aren't mapped. It's doing that. So again, this is a net positive. And what's going to happen is there's going to be more human sidecars doing the uncomfortable physical work. It does not mean humans are not going to continue to work and are not going to use their creativity, their ingenuity, their logic, their reasoning, and their poetry. What they're going to do is take all the shit jobs that we went, I don't want to do that, and made brown people do it, or had the Chinese government force the Uyghurs to do. That's what jobs are getting taken away. All the outsourced jobs will be done by robots. Think of every outsourced job you've ever heard of. That's including
or an individual in the U.S. will be productive enough to not have to outsource anymore.
That's
things like the coding is a good example of that. So we're going over, and you've got a second guess. So
that's right. So we do this all the time. Appreciate you, Rob Glenn. You and I will have an offline conversation about some of this very soon too.
Yeah, I'd love to figure out how to meld or weave the physical. These physical things, these like known entities that already exist into this conversation, because it's really important to get our bearings for it.
I might have to go to one of these facilities and just live stream from there. Anyways, you're awesome. Thank you so much, brother. And I will talk to you soon.
Chat. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
All right. See you later. There you go. And I'm going to pop over. You're not Liberal Dan. There's Liberal Dan. Hold on. I'll pop him in there. And second, Liberal Dan, you'll be right with us. And sorry, Rob Glenn and I get on a nerd tear, and it is nonstop. Hold on one second. Let me try and frame you up in here. There you go. Hey, there he is. Liberal Dan, everybody. And
hey, I mean, I'm a nerd too, so I was enjoying the conversation, so it's all good.
It is, I've been talking about this for a bit because I know everybody's like, it's very strange because on the one hand, and this goes to what the Democratic Party and organized labor and all these things are about, like at their essence, right? It is crucial that we deal with the reality that's coming in terms of what it's going to do to, to the labor market and to people who, care about this stuff. And on the other, but not relegate with this kind of like where we all turn into Judge Schmales from fucking Caddyshack and go, well, the world needs ditch diggers too, and write off our fellow humans and go, you know what? With a decent education, a lot of these folks could be more creative and spend more of their free time doing stuff other than, breaking their bodies doing really shitty work that they don't want to do, and then medicating themselves with alcohol because their joints and their back hurt and they're so exhausted at the end of the day, and therefore cascading this impact on the families that they're in over the course of generations, right? So it is, again, in an automated world, what is Labor Day?
But like one of the reasons that a lot of the times on the show, I'll talk about things like universal basic income, because I think we need to start getting maybe perhaps people getting used to that idea, simply because of the idea that I'll ask conservatives, what happens if the labor force is 90% automated and we only need like 10% of the labor force because we've managed to automate everything? What then do you do with individuals? And we have to have that, kind of consideration of how do we handle that? How do we make sure that people can still live whilst things are automated? And I think universal basic income is one way to accomplish that goal. And I think we need to start talking about it now, because it would require a fundamental change as to how we think about things. And if you want to have, if everybody gets automated, we can't just let people starve. And it will allow people to have the cushion to be able to do things like, do more creative works that they might want to do. And,
well,
and
the
maybe
interesting
sell
thing
those
is, okay,
things.
so here's one of the things with UBI is we both know that in a unregulated system, whoever's product is not regulated, that is a necessity, whether it's lodging, medicine, food, clothing, whatever it is. If you say starting tomorrow, UBI, everybody gets $1,000. Rich, poor, doesn't matter. Everybody gets $1,000 a month for their basic necessities. When you do that, you and I both know that is monetary inflation. That's monetary inflationary, because anybody who doesn't have a rule on they can jack their prices will, because there's that much more money in available, and therefore the value of that money goes down because their prices are going to go up too, for whatever that secondary thing is. So you have to put on certain price controls before that happens. So one of the things that Harris has been talking about to some degree is not a direct price control, but a rule on how fast you can raise prices. 5% on rent, and a similar equivalent on foodstuffs, right? So that, anti-gouging laws effectively during an emergency, right? To me, that says that's exactly what they're looking forward to. Not in a positive, that they're just looking ahead and seeing down the road, there's some sort of UBI or massive welfare thing that's going to happen as a transition, as we move from a resource-based economy where everybody's been fighting over the goo under people's feet in the Middle East or Alaska or Venezuela, to a renewable information economy and society where it really is based on competitive viability. Which will automatically exclude a bunch of people who've been, in the manufacturing world or in the physical labor world for a period of time anyways, until society resets itself, adapts to it, and we, proceed into the Deep Space Nine Star Trek future that I think we all hope we have. But you've got to set up those price controls before you set up UBI, otherwise it's all gone. Because in LA, if you gave everybody $1,000 more, rent goes up $1,000 the next week.
Well, one thing I think you have to deal with that. Because I've heard arguments about how, even when you have things like, Section 8, sometimes has an inflationary effect on housing as well, because the people, instead of going down to as low as people can pay, they'll be like, well, if I can get this Section 8 amount of money, then I'm going to charge that amount, which might be more than what it might be otherwise. But I think one of the ways you can fight the inflationary effects is with the UBI, if you structure the tax code in such a way, it's like, sure, everybody's getting that amount of money, but at some point in time when you make a certain amount of income, you're not necessarily seeing it because it's offset by the increase in tax on the people who are wealthier.
Sure, but then in reality, it would be a non-taxable income to be universal in the first place. And if you're just handing it out, what you are doing is you are taxing people to pay for that without representation in its decision. And so they'll fight over it the same way you see tax cuts. So then UBI, whatever that amount is, will be flexed based on whoever comes in. And the first time you implement it, you and I both know that if you don't slow walk it into society where people understand it or do it piloted in the States first, and then it grows into something in the same way that, ACA came from Romney Care and, in Massachusetts and grew out of that and had that kind of conservative weight in its corner so that it helped it develop and hopefully goes even further over time. The same thing with UBI is that unless you slow walk it in, there's going to be a backlash, and that backlash is going to be like, it's got to be 20%. And so Chris is saying UBI needs to be means tested. Then it's just welfare. What you're talking about.
What I was saying though is like, it doesn't have to be means tested, because if you structure the tax code in such a way so that the people who are making more than $400,000 a year aren't really getting that additional money because they're paying that much more in taxes, then that offsets it. Even though the UBI itself, as you said, shouldn't be taxable, it shouldn't count against unemployment. It should all these things. And one of the things that UBI also does, or would also do, is it would give those people in those lower paying jobs, those ones where there are lots of alternatives. It might give them a little more say in the negotiation table and say, hey, I don't want to work for you if you're only going to pay me this little amount of money, simply because of the fact that I can survive on this for the short term. So therefore, you're going to have to give me a better wage than you're giving me now.
Sure, but then again, that brings us
to labor.
That brings us back to the inflationary aspect of it, because all you're doing is putting $1,000 more in circulation on a specific product base. Food, rent, and rent specifically, not home ownership necessarily, because it might, it wouldn't be enough more than likely for most people to crest up into ownership unless we had a giant building boom. And again, 3D house printing will be a thing within a few years. Construction costs will go through the fucking floor. Depending on, and if we can craft materials that are wood substitutes that you can, basically IKEA a home that will last instead of making trailers. You really do jack up people's life experience to a much higher quality very quickly. That's in the next 10 years, we're not going to recognize the availability of those kind of things. But again, let's say you opt people out of that $1,000 by the tax code. You're still raising the cost by the mass of people who make less than 400,000, who are getting that $1,000 a month. You're still going to raise the cost of the general stuff that's for sale. That causes inflation. It will cause monetary inflation around these products. And the people who make 400,000, their 400,000 doesn't go as far. So the argument becomes, you've actually, instead of you're taking my $1,000 away, but you're going to tax me on a level, or the cost of my lifestyle has gone up 3,000 because of this. So I'm seeing a bigger hit than even the other people are gaining, because that's how monetary inflation impacts things. Now, again, the only thing that parallels this is you're going to see monetary inflation, but you're also going to see the cost of shit dump, because making manufacturing stuff, and by the way, somebody was saying, you mean 90% of Americans? 90% of Americans don't make less than 400,000 in the household, because it's a household income thing, the entire household. As a matter of fact, it's somewhere in the order of 56%, and only just barely. So we're talking about if you're UBIing a third of the populace, and this, it's a good conversation to have, because if you want to do it, like I said, I think the Harris administration is looking ahead to this. And by the way, Trump is doing it in his own way, too, with the no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, because he knows overtime
which I want to get to in a second.
Yes. He knows overtime's just going to go away. That's why he doesn't care. And he also wants it will flatten hiring. Why the fuck would I hire another person if everybody goes, I'll do all the overtime, and will work themselves to death for tax-free overtime, and it keeps me from hiring another human being for that. Right. I got a 60-hour week out of a dude who, I don't even have to pay him more. I can argue for paying him less in overtime because he's not paying tax on it. It's a stupid fucking plan. Right.
Well, I have a video on this, but the other thing is, if you look at Project 2025, which we all know Agenda 47 and Project 2025 are the same freaking thing. He can deny all he wants. Project 2025 wants to move how you figure out if you play unemployment. If you pay overtime, they want to basically make it so that instead of doing it 40 hours in 1 week, they want to say, okay, well, maybe it's 80 hours in 2 weeks or 160 hours in 4 weeks. So like you have these situations where you have Christmas, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, where, the big massive rush, you have everybody work, 60, 70 hours, the really hectic week. And then the next week you don't bring them in at all, or you bring them in maybe the 20 hours or to handle, the slowness of it. They end up working overtime in a week, what they would have gotten paid overtime, but now they no longer have to get paid overtime because you've changed the rules. So this whole, you don't have to get taxed on your overtime pay. Well, it's no longer overtime because we've now changed how you calculate overtime.
Right.
So yeah, it's a scam. It's one of his many.
They want to get rid of the 40-hour work week in the first fucking plant. Exactly. So right. And again, all of it is a leg sweep. All of it is just a snare. The way they're looking at it, because again, the Republican Party, the interesting thing is, Democrats may be victims of their own success in some ways, in that they've been working so hard for union jobs and union rights and union work over the time that it is, sometimes it's thought that the Democrats take certain voters for granted. Sometimes I think it's the other way around. And I think that's certainly what happened with women's rights in 2016, that the voters take the Democratic Party for granted and go, well, these rights will just stay there. The next person's not going to fuck with them. They're just going to, nobody's going to mess with Roe v. Wade. It doesn't really matter. Okay, this is all just a culture war bullshit because the Democrat neocon, blah, 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 right? And that's what got Trump in office. And gave him 3 Supreme Court justices that destroyed a woman's right to choose and made women second-class citizens in this country. And
I wish I could say that I was wrong. And in 2016, I was telling people Trump's going to name 3 Supreme Court justices, Roe v. Wade's going to go bye-bye, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's never going to happen." And I'm like, I wish I was wrong more.
Right.
I wish I was wrong more. I wish you were wrong more, because when we say things, we've said things that I can look back at predictions you've made, predictions I've made. It's just like, I wish I was wrong, but we're not. And it's like the whole with labor, like the whole union people voting for Trump just baffles my mind, because one of the things, labor unions give employees, especially the employees that don't have as much ability to negotiate their own wage, to negotiate their wage, to negotiate the terms of their employment en masse. If you don't think that these people, if they change the overtime rules, I don't know why I say unemployment, if they change the overtime rules so that, you working at Target or Walmart or whatever can work 60 hours in a week and not get paid time and a half for those additional 20, those places are also going to be like, and if you don't work, you're fired. Yeah. And so those people are going to be like, well, I have to now work my butt off, and now I'm not getting paid the extra money that I would have gotten paid normally for it.
And again, you have to understand that when Trump says "Make America Great Again," there's a reason why this motherfucker chose the name Barron for his son and John Barron for himself, because he viewed in the early '80s that he was going to be one of the few elites in a new age of robber barons, of effectively the baron class of Americans. That's what he really believed. That's why he used that name. That's why it matters to him. It's grotesque. And of course, thank God he's too much of an idiot to actually pull it off. But that's exactly why he chose. Okay? That's exactly why he used that name for himself, because he viewed himself as this kind of like Ayn Randian figure, which is a joke because he's monstrously unqualified for every job he has ever had. But that hasn't stopped sort of, these other folks from believing the myth that he set up, that he's super wealthy and he's smart and he must be wealthy because he's smart, and those two are always aligned, which they are absolutely not. The question,
I have the best brain. Nobody has better brains.
Nobody. Yes, I know the best people. Even though I never could find any of them. I remember the whole thing of like fucking 2016, man. He was like, I'm going to just call these. We have a trade deal. I'm just going to call these people and ask them what they would do. And we're going to have the smartest people advising me. And none of them apparently none of them would return his phone call if they ever existed in the first place. Or quite frankly, they told him to do the opposite of what he ultimately did, and just distanced themselves because they were like, this fucker's an idiot. And and basically the Mark Cubans of the world, who have really been going after him lately, which is nice to see, and I think the only reason Bezos isn't doing it, besides the fact that he stepped aside as the Amazon head and his marriage issues, and probably because he owns the Washington Post and doesn't want it taking a bigger hit than it already has. The only reason, he hasn't done it, besides those reasons, is because I think he's looking down. He just doesn't. He's not a good judge of whether or not Trump's going to win this time. He's not, by the way. But the reality is that Donald Trump has all of his plans are snags. But I think the Harris, team, which is not that different from the Biden team, they're looking down the road at the way AI and automation and shortened supply chains and futurism is pointing this country. And they're going, we're going to have some kind of a strategy to deal with this shit so that we don't have an absolute collapse of our economic model. Because that's exactly what's going to happen in a lot of, not third world countries, but I would argue second world countries, right? Once the CCP outlives the usefulness of its own people, it's going to be fucking dark. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the Harris administration, surrounds herself or itself with, smart, intelligent people who she will take advice from because she's smart enough to know that she's not an expert on every single thing there is to know on the planet, and she's going to listen to the experts. Trump is going to only surround himself with yes men, yes people who are going to be like, oh, you're the best. Your ideas are wonderful. Even though, for example, like he's suggesting his tariffs, nobody, how many people have forgotten how the tariffs almost killed the farmers back during his first term, and
that's why he had to pay them off with Chinese money.
Exactly. He had to funnel the money all to the farmers and then some, just to try and save the farmers with the harm that he did in the first place. So,
especially because China imports 80% of its food and energy. I think it's even 85% of its energy at this point, even with all the coal plants it's allegedly creating every 2 weeks. It imports all that. Most of its farmland is unarable and toxic now because they have no rules and no regulations. You want to know what no regulations does to farmland and aquifers and waterways and shit like that? Look no further than central China. That's the future Republicans want for America. They just want pipelines running over top of everywhere our fresh water comes from. It's moronic. But the Chinese have basically destroyed all their farmland, so they buy all their food from the rest of the world, and namely us. That's why we started growing so many soybeans in this country. The soybean crop in the United States, as far as sales in the United States, is fucking minuscule compared to the exports.
Right.
We keep this much of the fucking tofu that's made from soy in the United States, and some filler. And and there was an arc of it for a while because we had a little, because the fresh availability of some of it, and then it all went away. Even soy milk, oat milk took over. It's much more conducive to a natural crop that we have here and all that kind of stuff. Almost all the soybeans we grow here in the United States, sold to China. Without it, they will fucking starve. If you block, that one passage, in the South China Sea for 3 months, 400 million people will starve to death in China. There will be no food coming in from Europe and Africa, the other place they buy it from. They will die. And that is not any way to run a country. But it's also why the farmers, when he's like, the farmers came in and they didn't even want a subsidy. Everybody wants a subsidy. They all want money, but the farmers just said, all we want is a level playing field. And that's because they weren't having a problem with trade. They weren't having a problem selling their shit. As a matter of fact, they were selling almost all of their crop to China. It was everybody else that was having, we're obviously not selling plastics to China. We're obviously not selling, wind-up toys and shit like that, or batteries. We weren't selling them to China. Why would we? We sell them in the United States. We make them in the United States, but we don't need to export them for them to have value. We've got enough of a market here, right? But the food guys, Iowa, Jesus Christ, Xi Jinping came over and wanted to visit his old friends in Iowa from decades ago when he first, when he was just like a minister of the CCP and he was in charge of getting foodstuffs from all over the world. He became friends with a bunch of the farmers in Iowa because they need the food so much.
Right.
I don't get it. I don't know why these maggots don't understand this part of it at all. They think they still believe that China's going to eat our lunch bullshit. They still think we have monetary inflation from money that we created during COVID, never counting the money that was absolutely destroyed during COVID. Yes, Big Stefan saying we have to tell them. Absolutely right. That's why, by the way, this is Liberal Dan. He has a show called Liberal Dan Radio on Twitch. Is it on YouTube as well under the same name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the YouTube link is simply liberaldanradio.com. It just gets you there. So that's the easiest way to get to it. So, but yeah, it's also on Twitch, Liberal Dan Radio, Twitter, Facebook, all of it's Liberal Dan Radio. So
great.
Yeah, I mean, I just lost my train of thought. One of the circling back to one of the other points before I go back to the other one, maybe I want to remember it, is that Trump likes to put himself as such a great businessman, and then people be like, oh, he's a terrible businessman. He had 6 bankruptcies with his companies, and I think that's the wrong tactic to take with that particular argument, because that. Yeah, he may very well be a bad business person with bad ideas like Trump steaks or whatever, but his bankruptcies were more an example of his corruption, his using the tools of the federal government to get out of paying people debts that he owes and while enriching himself. So that's not necessarily being a bad businessman in that. I mean, yeah, he ran the business into the ground, but in doing so, he made a crap ton of money. I mean, he still probably would have made more money if he would have just put his money into a hedge fund when he inherited it and just let that be the end of it. But still, he didn't need bankruptcy to stiff some people because he got away with that anyway. But then once he figured, okay, I'm going to let the casino go bankrupt, and now I don't have to pay, any of my creditors because now they're bankrupt. But I still managed to pay myself a whole bunch of money in my golden parachute. So I think the corruption angle might hit better than the just trying to say, oh, he's a bad businessman. No, he's a corrupt businessman, and that's why he needs to not be one of the many reasons why he needs to not be in the reins of power. So
apparently, and by the way, this is I guess the breaking news of the hour is the Matt Gaetz stuff. I wanted to cover since you and I both cover, just kind of not just the scumbaggery of Trumpistan, but his surrounding fellow cretins as well. Hold on, I got to.
I've only seen the new stuff about the Mark Robinson stuff. So this Matt Gaetz stuff is actually breaking to me as well. So
so here, let me move you over there and get you in. There you go, situated where we can see you. New court filings place Matt Gaetz at a party at the center of a sex trafficking scandal is the breaking news on this. First public filing that cites sworn testimony alleging that Gaetz attended one of the long rumored parties with a teenage girl. Rep. Matt Gaetz attended a drug-fueled sex party in 2017 with the 17-year-old girl at the center of the alleged sex trafficking scandal, according to legal documents filed in the Florida federal court shortly before midnight on Thursday, which cite sealed affidavits from 3 eyewitness testimonies. The minor, who was a junior in high school at the time, arrived in her mother's car for the July 15th, 2017 party at Florida home of Chris Dorworth, a lobbyist and friend of Gaetz's. According to a court filing written by defense attorneys who interviewed witnesses as part of an ongoing civil lawsuit Dorworth brought in 2023. The lobbyist claimed he had been unfairly dragged into the alleged sex scandal that has dogged Gaetz and his allies for years. Dorworth ultimately dropped the case, but lawyers filed these documents in an attempt to recoup attorney's fees for a lawsuit they said would never have been brought. One eyewitness cited in the court filings, a young woman referred to as KM, provided a sworn affidavit that claimed the teenage girl was naked. Partygoers were there were to engage in sexual activities. Alcohol, cocaine, ecstasy, and marijuana were present. The teenage girl was identified in the filings only as AB. The discovery taken in this case date reflects that on Saturday, June 15, 2017, Dorworth hosted a party at his residence with the following guests present: 1 AB, 2 KM, 3 BG, and 4 Matt Gaetz. Lawyers wrote in the filing, also listing several others. The defense lawyers filed testimonies from those 3 women, who the attorneys say placed Gaetz at Dorworth's house that night under seal, pending a judge's approval to make the records public. Additionally, Gaetz's own ex-girlfriend, who was present at the party, provided testimony that lawyers say rebuts Dorworth's claims that he was not there. Notice independently verified that Gaetz and one of the women who testified were previously involved in a relationship. She's only identified as BG in the filings. This marks the first time that sworn testimony has been referenced in public court filings alleging that the congressman attended one of the long-rumored parties tied to an alleged underage sex scandal. Previous reports have revealed details of ex-politician and Gaetz friend Joel Greenberg's confession letter that was never made public, which described how Gaetz would allegedly pay him to arrange several sexual encounters with young women, including a 17-year-old girl. Greenberg is serving an 11-year prison sentence for a list of charges including fraud and sex trafficking with a child. That was his fucking wingman. The dude used to make fake IDs and so that they could fly these girls out of the state.
Right. And we all knew about the Venmo thing. I mean, that's not that's not breaking. That's something that's new, and that's why I've been calling him Pizza Gates this entire time, because you know they tried to make a big deal out of Pizzagate or whatever, you know, that BS thing. But where, you know, every conservative accusation is a confession, and so Matt Pizzagates is sitting there and you know, doing the things he's accusing other people of, allegedly, and
of course,
but of course they're gonna. All of his supporters and Trump is, you know, they're just going to circle the wagons and they're going to pretend like nothing happened. And they, it's because hypocrisy is a conservative prerequisite.
Yeah, I think though that this is a rough one though. This is a difficult. This will be. Yeah, this is.
I would
the
love to
first
see
time
one of them actually get through, and actually one of them actually get punished for it, and then see how the dominoes fall. But you know, they're blind. Like, I was listening to a conservative talk show this morning, when it's one I usually listen to. You've actually reviewed one of his videos. The guy's name is Jeff Carrere. You've actually reviewed one of his videos, and at least one. And the guest that he had on was like, you know, I would rather a scumbag who will vote for the things that I support than a good person who won't. And that's ultimately the line in the sand for them, is they don't care what these people do, how horrible they do.
Does it ever occur to them, and I know this might be a reach, excuse me, ma'am, one more question, if I could. Does it ever occur to you that maybe the good people are against the things you're for, and the bad people are for the things you're for, because maybe, perhaps, I'm just saying, you indeed are a bad person, sir. It's a reasonable question. Maybe you want awful shit. That's why only awful people support your shit. I'm going out on a limb here. It seems logical. Yeah.
Makes sense to me. Absolutely.
So I guess Matt Gaetz, hashtag some Diddy, I guess, at this point. We shall see. Lil Diddy. What's his going to be?
Little Diddy.
I like Lil Diddy.
I think Little Diddy. Yeah. Little Diddy, yes. That would work.
Matt Lil Diddy Gaetz. Okay, that'll work. Hashtag Lil Diddy. Yeah. I'm glad we worked that out. I have to say, I watched a documentary on Netflix yesterday called Into the Fire, about a woman who put her daughter up for adoption, and then the girl went missing and found out that it's just, I don't want to ruin for everybody. Spoiler alert, it's 2 episodes. They're very long, but it's very good. But it's about this woman trying to find her daughter who, no surprise, is not alive. But how she became not alive is particularly terrible. And the victim of sexual violence as well. And when you talk about like a 17-year-old girl dosed on ecstasy by someone like Matt Gaetz with his Joker fucking face and his 5 head, and I not that there's a good way to have someone sexually assault you or whatever, but the monstrosity of his face anywhere near you is such a horrifying thought that it like, do you know what I mean? Like, where it gets extra gross. It's not like it ever gets easy, but there's certain people where you're like, Jesus Christ, that they, you know, that it's like, he looks like a fucking villain from the Batman series years ago. You know, the 60s Batman series. They were like, nah, too scary for kids. You know, or one of the rejected McDonald's characters before they all got, Campbell's soup washed, got their cheeks full, as opposed, you know, the original Hamburglar and that kind of stuff.
Right, I was literally just about to say the Hamburger. That Hamburger, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just a fucking gross prick. And it's so, and you know, like I said, there is no positive way for this to happen, but there are ways, I think, where people just vitriolically have a reaction to, you know, there are certain people where I'm like, like Trump. I don't know that he's ever had consensual sex in his life. I think people, like some women, have given into it because they feel like there's a product on the other side, so they can put up with it long enough just to get something out of it, which is, lifestyle stuff or protection or, you know, or whatever. Security, financial security, that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's because they want it.
Right. Exactly.
And that,
especially
to me,
in
is
his later
grotesque.
years. Especially in his later years. Yeah.
He was never attractive, though. He was never, like, and again, that's why I don't believe he's a narcissist. I don't buy it. I think he knows. I think he looks at his own reflection and goes, fuck. And he's mad at any woman who won't fuck him because they can see through it and no amount of money makes him worth it. And he's mad at any woman who does have sex with him because they're only doing it for the money because they couldn't possibly be doing it for his dopey face and his stupid hair. And he knows it. That's why he hates women. That's where the root of his misogyny is, that he thinks the only women who would sleep with him must be whores, and the women who won't can see through his bullshit, narcissistic, his fake narcissism.
Right, and there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I have no evidence of this, obviously, but there's no doubt in my mind that Matt Gaetz in college, didn't roof like at least several people.
Right. He just reeks of it.
Yeah, just like there's this thing I can put and slip into people's drinks, and then they won't remember. Okay, cool. Like he's just that much of a scumbag. They are that much of scumbags.
Yeah, and unrepentant and kind of proud about it. And again, there were. Who is?
And where's Nestor? Wait, where's Nestor though? Where's Nestor in all this?
Right. What? How's Nestor?
You can't forget about Nestor.
Why is no one interviewing Nestor? Right. Right. Well, one of the stories we heard about Matt Gaetz, besides just fucking is that he would show nude pictures of girls on the floor of the house, right, to other guys, and there were literally MAGA men who were like, get the fuck away from me. So credit where credit is due. These guys, now they didn't do anything about it, and they didn't inquire about, hey, is that the 17-year-old girl that he roofied, right? He's just showing me like nude parts of a woman. God knows if she was awake when this fucking picture was taken. Did they follow through? No. Should they have? Fuck yes. That said, I will at least give them credit for knowing, like, you don't want to be anywhere near this asshole at that point. Sure. But this news is breaking everywhere right now. The girl was a high school junior when she was taken to this party with Matt Gaetz and others, including Joel Greenberg, I believe, and this other dude who was like, filing a lawsuit saying he's being dragged into this scandal that failed because he lied about being there himself.
These conservatives are driving me crazy because every week I try and do a bit that's called Hypocrite of the Week, where I do like this little spiel or whatever. It's like usually a 30-second thing. This last week, it had to be longer because there was a hat trick of hypocrisy. There was 3 of them. But, this week it's almost, it's pretty much going to be either between Mark Robinson and Matt Gaetz, or probably just going to be both of them. Probably just going to be both of them because, both of them just terrible.
Yeah.
But Mark Robinson, I mean, the only thing I'm thankful about with Mark Robinson is it's making it much more likely that Kamala Harris wins North Carolina.
Right. Because if anybody's going to drive Republicans away from the polls, it's going to be Mark Robinson, in theory. He's continued to stay in the race. He said, he's continuing to stay in the race. But I
saw one rumor. I don't know if this is verified. So it's just a rumor that I saw one location, but I saw that the people that may have released the information about his whatever Africa nude Africa that he was part
site.
Of.
Yep.
The people who dropped that may have very well been North Carolina Republicans who were trying to get them to drop out of the race before the deadline.
Right, and
I don't know if that's true.
Right,
and they missed, but I don't know if it's true. But if it's true, I mean, that just shows how much, lack of a spine they have, because they're willing to go on behind people's backs and leak things, but they won't just say, "Look, you're too much. You need to go. We need to back somebody else. We need to undo this nomination and fix it." But they won't, because it's Trump's guy. Trump said he's the Martin Luther King 2.0 or whatever, which is insanely bizarre.
Right. So for those that don't know, let's catch them up on Mark Robinson. So Mark Robinson would post under a pseudonym, a nom de plume, on Nude Africa, that minus some vowels, spelled mini soldier, which I have to say, if you're going to pick a nickname, a username on one of these sites that's a sex site, Mini Soldier seems to be a weird choice. I will say.
Unless you're into humiliation, maybe. Yeah,
sure.
If that's your
good
kink,
point.
then fine. I
That's
don't
right.
kink shame.
That's a great
your kink
idea.
and everything
Yeah,
consents, whatever. Just don't be a hypocrite about it.
Right. We're not here to yuck anybody's yum. Sure. But apparently, on this particular nude forum, one of the things that he said was he called himself a black Nazi. He said that he was a perv as well, which I mean. Again, we're not here to yuck anybody's yum. I wouldn't necessarily, but if that's how he calls what he does, who cares? But he also said he enjoyed watching trans porn, and that he believed that some people deserved slavery. Now.
And he would own slaves too. He said he would own them. He would want to buy them as well. He would want to own slaves. And he has a history. I mean, but even before that, he Holocaust denier, and told trans people to go pee in a bush, like all sorts of vile rhetoric that he's stated for years. That I don't even know how he made it to lieutenant governor, let alone to this process where but I mean, I know how he got to the nomination is because there's enough people in the Republican Party who are MAGA conservative crazy who can get anybody who's that far to the extreme across that finish line to get the nomination, even if it means you might lose the general election because they care more about that the people that they vote for hate who they hate. Right.
And I mean look, is everything somebody says on a porn comment section? I don't even know how this fucking thing was arranged, whether it was like a dating and meetup site or just like, who the fuck comments on porn videos? That baffles my mind. You know what I mean? Yeah, the lighting was okay. Like, you know what I mean? But I think you're
using too many hands there.
Yeah, right. The story. That's
probably
true.
One hand. One handed typing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Just off screen. Giant. Anyways, I don't know why. Like the story lost me, but lighting was great. Is the guy's phone broken? What the hell? Like who writes in those comment sections and then goes into longer conversations? He wrote at one point that he came to a spot at a dead end, but had two big vent covers over the outside of girls' locker room, which sounds like a story he stole from Porky's. But he goes, I sat there for about an hour and watched as several girls came in and showered. I think that might have been Stripes. But he goes, I went peeping again the next morning, but after that I went back. The ladder was locked, so those 2 times were the only times I got to do it. Memories. And he said, I like watching tranny on girl porn. That's effing hot. It takes the man out while leaving the man in. And yeah, I'm a perv too. Again, do people play characters on these sites and say stuff they wouldn't normally say? Is it, and again, where people's reality ends and their sexual fantasies begin is, again, not a problem we have on the Democratic side, right? I personally don't know anybody who would get sexual pleasure out of dressing up as a Nazi camp guard and doing some sort of weird shit or whatever. But I guess as long as you're doing it in play and it's part of your sexual and you're not doing it anywhere else, I don't know that I would have anything to say about it. I think it was gross if you brought it up. I would certainly castigate you for it if you told me, but I wouldn't go looking for that piece of information on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I can say that because I don't think I know anybody, and that's the thing. I don't think I know anybody who would be into that kind of thing, as we all would. But I certainly think it's curious that it is this guy. Up to this point, the video we've seen of him the most is him preaching or speaking at a black church. I don't think he was officially preaching. He would just come and politically preach. I don't quite know what, but that whole thing about him believing that, we need to extend the death penalty to a lot of people and some people just need to die. Very Christian stuff.
Oh yeah.
Right. So,
totally.
his candidacy is doomed. Let's just be honest.
Someone in the chat, I forget who, said, I saw it scrolling by, said something about that Mark Robinson would be a slave in Trump's world or whatever. It's like, yeah, but Trump would probably have him working in the House, and that would probably be okay with him as long as he was working in the House, right?
Well, there were I think the first official slaveholder in the United States was black. And that was because of a variant difference between indentured servitude and chattel slavery. The first chattel slavery owner was a black man, and there was a woman who was they always talk about in Louisiana, I think, who was one of the most vilified slave owners anywhere. Like some of the white slave owners were like, yeesh, right? About how she treated her slaves, right? So it wasn't uncommon, and people would sometimes buy their freedom and then own slaves and that kind of stuff. So it's, again, people are people. And I know he knows that story, is my point. I know he knows of that and believes that he would have been there. There are not, in his MAGA world, there aren't blacks and whites, there aren't brown people and white people. There are in Trump's. But in his version of it, they're poor people and there's us. There's people with money and then there's everybody else, and they're disposable. And therefore, the world is full of disposable people that are there for my hedonistic pleasure, for me to watch or any of that. Yeah. I think it might have been LaLaurie. Yeah. Somebody said in the chat. Point being is that I'm sure he believes he's one of the elevated few in the same way that Trump does. Based on nothing, of course. But I'm sure he knows that history. I'm sure he's read his Thomas Sowell. And I'm sure he can quote it, occasionally at the drop of a hat without any of the sort of introspective elements of it. And I'm sure that's what Trump likes about him and did like about him, right? Is that he's one of these guys who would probably give Trump an end pass.
I mean, Trump, one of his rallies the other day, Trump said he wants to take us back 300 years. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, that would be before, even the Brits really started pushing it hard.
Right.
Yeah. So
he wanted to take it back there. Then I could be the one that started. I'd make slavery great again.
Right. Well, and again, I don't know. I don't know how serious what Robinson wrote on these sites is, but what I do know is he's an inserious person. Right. That he's grotesque, hedonistic, driven by his own weak impulse control. He's gross. He's mean, right? And just like Matt Gaetz, just like Donald Trump. It has gotten so bad on the Republican side that Marjorie Taylor Greene had a weird moment of sanity. Liberal Dan, how did we reach this point? I ask you, sir, I don't know.
The Jewish space laser woman said that Laura Loomer went too far with her bigotry. What?
What?
That she was one of the trifecta. She was one of the trifectas because the idea, I could see her calling her out at it, but then for Marjorie Taylor Greene to say this sort of thing has no room in the Republican Party. No, it's perfectly cozy in the Republican Party, Miss Jewish space laser causing the California fires, and you're backing Trump, who we would run out of time if I listed all of his racist comments and everything else. No, it's like how you can understand what that Laura Loomer said was so bad, yet still not have the mindset to be like, oh, well, maybe other things are wrong too. No, it's just like, ooh, that was wrong, but I'm still going to back Trump because, he's my boy.
Yeah. By the way, I'd like to show you something. This is a fresh video of early voting in Virginia. Today's the first day of early voting. And there is a line. You'll notice the total lack of red hats and the generalized crowd looking like a bunch of people, like Harris voters, that can't wait to fucking bank their vote. And that's what I recommend. And I think I would imagine you agree as well, Liberal Dan, that if you can vote early, wherever you are, bank your vote. Just go in and do it. Don't if you got your mail-in ballot, if they've mailed it to you, walk it into whatever your, like the courthouse or whatever place is receiving them in your area. And if you can vote in person at any of those places, go do it. Find yourself some time, go ahead. And because they will throw every possible thing they can against this. Let's see.
I don't know if potentially they could. I don't know if they could wear their MAGA hats to the polls. I don't know if that would be considered political gear or not, but they probably wouldn't care anyway. And they'd probably be told at some point you need to take your hat off. But still, it's, I'm sure most of these people that are showing up to vote early in such a long line are probably going to be people that are voting for Harris because, strong turnout is always good for the Democrats.
Right.
That's why,
no matter what.
That's why Republicans consistently want to make the electorate as little turnout as possible and as white as possible and as old as possible, because that's the way that they maintain their minority rule.
Right.
Like I have a GOPQ series, like 4 videos, basically going into all the ridiculous, or a lot of the ridiculousness that has gone on, especially since they overturned parts of the Voting Rights Act, to that basically has made it so that the states can disenfranchise voters. Like in North Carolina, the judge kicked out that rule, that law, because, as he said, the Republicans in the legislature targeted black voters with surgical precision. You have so many other things, and the reasoning in the overturning of those parts of the Voting Rights Act by Roberts was mind-numbingly stupid. Like, we haven't had examples of this for the last 60 years, so therefore we don't need it. That's like me in New Orleans saying, "Oh, the Mississippi River hasn't flooded New Orleans, so we no longer need the levee system." Like,
yeah, exactly.
Dumb.
Well, it's like we haven't had any lion attacks at the zoo, so we don't need the we don't need the cages anymore.
Right.
We don't need fencing at the zoo because we haven't had anybody attacked by an animal. That's exactly and the idiocy of it is stunning. Although I don't think it was dumb. I think it was strategic. That said, I would like to say that officially, in the Silver Bulletin does this kind of like odds of winning the presidency. Harris has officially pulled ahead enough times to where they have made it official. She's got a 51.1% chance. Trump has a 48.6%. She has a 72% chance of winning the popular vote.
Right.
She is predicted to win 276.7 electoral votes. So she's up by 6. That's all she needs. And she will, the popular vote share, 50 to 48. I think it will be larger than that. But that said, this is a big deal that she officially pulled ahead.
My thing is, I don't like to say always like run or vote or campaign like you're 20 points behind. I don't like that saying because 20 point behind seems hopeless. Always, I would say run, campaign, vote, whatever.
Like it's in the margin of error.
Behind. Like you're 2 points behind. Like you're right there, but you still need a little bit more to go. Make that extra effort. Get out there. Make sure to vote. Make sure your friends vote. And if people need convincing as to why they need either come out and vote for Harris, or why they should reject Trump if they're fence sitters or if they're voting third party or whatever, they need to share videos of you, of me, of Boston Brian, of all these other creators who are out there fighting the good fight, as you said the other day, without buying bots, who are doing this organically, who are trying to, make these arguments and fight for, our democracy, because that's what's at stake.
Absolutely. You can't say that, liberal Dan. You're inciting violence if you say democracy is at stake. But democracy is at stake, but because of them, not us. But because that's I think my favorite part of his criticism about what they're saying is creating violence against me, so they shouldn't say it. And I'm then going to follow it up by immediately saying the same thing about them. Even though
they're the enemies
of all the of all the people who've actually attacked human beings, it's been Trump's followers. January 6th, the FBI office in Cincinnati, even the 2 shooters in his case. One's a registered Republican, the other one's an independent. Both of them are lean Republican on every front. Like, I mean, the last guy's obviously nuts. So I look forward to whatever his testimony or his because didn't he write a book, literally like asking Iran to like, or no, asking Elon Musk for missiles so that he could fire it on Iran and he'll never need to get it back. Like, dude's Looney Tunes. But again,
but we also
our
have,
side.
We also have, you know, now we officially have, and we're going to see more, we officially have two black women who are dead in Georgia because of Dobbs v. Jackson. Dobbs v. Jackson has now officially killed 2 people, and there are probably going to be a lot more coming out of the woodwork these days because of, you know, we cannot let the Republican Party gain an inch of power anymore in this country. Right. It doesn't matter. Presidency, Congress, Senate, legislatures, dog catcher, I don't care. You need to get out there and stop them every single time in every single election, because what the people don't show up in off-year elections, that's when you lose rights in off-year elections. That's you know, in 2010, in Project Red Map is how the Republicans started stealing all of these legislatures and then gerrymandering it so they could lock it up and never lose them. So then that's because people didn't show up in 2010. They only showed up in 2008 and 2012. You need to show up every single damn time and vote. And it doesn't matter if you have, you know, high, you know, excitement about a candidate. You know, there are candidates I voted for that I was like, you know, held my nose for and voted, but you know, it's the important thing to do because, you know, that person was going to be more in tune with my political beliefs, and the other person was going to, you know, make us into a hellhole that we don't want to, we'll never escape from.
Right. I'm looking forward to, like, you know, Donald Trump, like this week, he had Liberty, World Liberty Financial. He announced his DeFi bank, his decentralized finance vehicle. Again, a literal copy of what Sam Bankman-Fried went to jail for. Based on the architecture where this company Doe Finance was based on. They were just hacked, and their people lost $2 million. This was just an app. They basically just built the same thing. This is Don Jr. bringing him this shit. Just throwing everything he can into Bitcoin, but basically for its money laundering value. Let's be abundantly clear. That's why he wants it, because nobody can track crypto. So if you're gonna get money from the Russians, you're going to get money via crypto. That's the way to do it, because he thinks it's not traceable. By the way, it is. It is absolutely traceable. Sorry, dummies. But in the process, he's going to release his own crypto, more NFTs, a second pressing of Save America, his picture book using pictures he has no rights to use. Another run of shoes, maybe. I don't know. At this point, it feels like he knows he's going to lose, and he's just using this as an ad campaign, right?
Right. He probably needs to get enough money up there so that when he loses, he can jump on a plane and leave the country because he doesn't want to go to prison.
Right. It's a bug out. Like this. That's what it's for. It's a bug out. Yeah. Anyways, I want to remind everybody, we're at the end of the show. LiberalDanRadio.com is the website, which will take you to whichever your favorite site to watch it on. He's at Liberal Dan Radio on Twitter as well, or a shitter, as I like to call it, because I pronounce it like Xi Jinping. And let's see, and you're on, what's your schedule right now?
It's Mondays and Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Central, so 9 East, 6 Pacific. At least 2 times a week. If I do have a special, time, if something is like really big that breaks, like Supreme Court rulings or stuff like that, I will do a live reaction to those as well. I'll announce that either on my YouTube page, on Twitter as well, or shitter. But yeah, it's usually Mondays and Wednesdays. I also have a nerdydan.com, which is the same thing, nerdydan, DOTCOM, that I do live streaming on Tuesdays. And like this past Tuesday, the entire time we pretty much just talked politics while I played games. So,
which is a good time.
And one more thing I wanted to throw in. Yeah. I may very well have a presidential candidate coming on my show soon.
Look out.
Vermin Supreme might be coming on my show.
All right, sure.
Yeah.
Perennial presidential candidate, Vermin Supreme. Excellent. Well, good luck with that. And don't forget to squeegee your monitor afterwards. Thanks so much, brother. All right, we'll see you again.
All right, thank you very much.
Cheers.
Anytime, and more than happy to come on again.
Love it. Thanks, brother. All right, there he goes, ladies and gentlemen. Liberal Dan. Give it up for him. Excellent. And Rob Glenn, and boy, did we nerd out today. Holy smokes. I will see you guys this afternoon, and then I have to go to Durham, to North Carolina, for Sexy Liberal tomorrow. Very exciting. And that's all I'm going to say, because I gotta go pack. Jesus. That's but I can always do the show digitally if I need. So hit the like, share, etc., etc. I'm tired. I got to go do. There's so much show to do. I got prep to do for this afternoon. Are there pay-per-view tickets? No, not for Durham. There will be for LA, November 3rd. So we'll see you then. By the way, on another note, on our way out, let's just enjoy the dulcet tones of Roseanne mishandling a handgun at an event she did for I guess this is a Minnesota Trump campaign. Just got a gun, just pointing it at her son's right in front of her. She's all up, and pointing, doesn't take the magazine out, doesn't check the chamber, nothing, no safety whatsoever. I think that's her son moves the case for her. This is her never surrender Trump gun. She's got her finger on the trigger. Her son holds it up. Then he points it at her to hand it back to her because he's a fucking moron. And then she takes it by the barrel and then puts her finger back on the trigger again. Roseanne, stop it. And that has been Hal Sparks gets annoyed that gun nuts don't know gun etiquette or gun safety. Fucking hell. But we should trust them. Just trust them. She's a good gal with a gun.